because of man's basic need to get in touch with something he thinks is out there bigger than himself, which is their deity, their God, their creator, whatever, that in all times, and especially in ancient times, priesthoods arose using that knowledge and distorting their truth and saying they had the truth. And because of that, they became very dominant over the people. They controlled the people's minds through the religion. Mm-hmm. And with them, wherever they went, they brought the money system with them. That's very important, because the money is a form of slavery. Once you get people to accept money, you can then tax it back from them. You can hire armies and go and conquer other countries. We're really seeing the culmination of thousands of years of this very technique coming to an end with the Middle East, and they're put under the exact same system for global domination. This agenda has been on the table for an awful long time. And it also takes the cooperation of all existing religions to go along with this. If you notice, not one of the major religions or religious leaders is warning the public about the future and what it has in store for the general public, either in the cloning field, the genetic engineering field, the eugenics field, and the depopulation programs that they've been putting forward for a long time. None of the religious leaders who have the power and the authority to tell people, look, start thinking about this, none of them tell them even talk about it or even discuss it, which tells you they're all in on this together at the very top levels.
Right, so you're not just talking, you're talking about all the major religions at the top levels perhaps working together to mislead the masses, and this goes back a long, long way. Can you give us any kind of history that you uncovered throughout the centuries that lead you to believe this is true?
It's not just coming to believe it. It's when you stumble across major figures in history like Alexander the Great, for instance. Now, Alexander the Great was taught, his mentor was Aristotle, the philosopher. And Aristotle was married to one of the biggest international moneylenders of his own era. And the same moneylenders from the Middle East funded the Macedonians and the Greeks to go into Persia and take it over. They paid for the war, in other words. And all the people who were taken over had to pay it all back through taxes to repay the money sharks. But you find the same thing all down through history. Moneylenders, the leaders that teach and put up frontmen like Alexander the Great, or maybe a George Bush in our time. It's all the same old con game. They're all interrelated, we find, through their wives and through their mentors. They're all intermarried, interrelated, and this is their world as far as they're concerned. John Kerry's the same with his wife, who's involved in the Heinz industry. They said they'd take over the food industry, 40, 50 years ago, because when you take over the food industry, you have war on the people. And war in all times takes into account economic war, food and water, all the basics. When you're having a war on a city or on a whole country or on a world, you go for those primary things. And it's just a coincidence, of course, we have John Kerry, who's married to the Heinz dynasty, who I'm sure have been modifying those foods since they created the company called Heinz. Modification of the food to the modification of the people. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? I'm looking here on your website, and you have 3 books available, correct? One is Cutting Through Number 1, and then Cutting Through Number 2, A Glimpse into the Great Work, and then Cutting Through Number 3, Esoteric Unveiled and the Meaning of Revelations in the High Masonic Tradition. Why don't we start with your first book and tell us what's that about? That's the go ahead.
Really, hermaphrodite has different meanings in the occult industry. In ancient times, they talked about the perfection of the human being, where the left and right brain would be working together, emotion versus reason. It would come to a harmonized point, and that was the perfected man, or the illumined man, as they called it. You'll find the same thing hidden behind major religions. In Genesis, the deity splits himself. He makes a double of himself, and from that double, he then subdivides Adam and Eve from it, meaning that the deity himself was male and female. That's the meaning in the Genesis. You also find the same thing in the writings of Plato. The deity they worshipped was it was male on the front and female on behind when they walked the other way. They're talking about the ultimate perfection is going to be a creature which is neither male nor female, which can self-reproduce. And it's an odd agenda to have, you might think, but it's always been here for thousands of years. Now, they have talked about the creation of the perfect worker human being that would be both male and female and could self-reproduce. That way there's no conflict. The world they want to bring in has to be conflict-free, free from conflict of nations or races, ethnic groups, but also no conflict of gender conflict. That's what they call their utopia, their peace on earth. However, the elite themselves have said they will not alter themselves. They will only alter the worker bees to be more perfect. And one day, if you serve the system of the state very well, the honor you will have is the right to reproduce yourself, an exact model of yourself.
And that's the first book. You talk a lot about that, correct?
Yes, and also how it's all done through the Masonic coding, hidden in the language, right through so many different words that we use commonly without thinking of what they really mean. Our language itself was given to us to contain coding, as all the high Freemasons know.
Just before we get into your other works, the second and third books, give us your thoughts about religion, about the Bible, about the Quran, about how all these things fit in your thinking, and whether it's important to follow one of these groups, or whether you feel that a person can find, I guess, the Creator without any of it. And just give me your thoughts about religion, the Bible, the Quran, and all the Jewish books that tell about ways to find the Creator. What do you think?
Well, if you go through the mainstream religions, all have, for the West in a way, all came from basically the Hebrew versions and split off. The Christians would say it was the culmination or the completion of Judaism to have a Messiah. Most Jews think the Messiah is still to come, and you can have many Messiahs within Judaism. Anyone who furthers the cause is called the Messiah. And Mohammedism was slightly tailor-made and altered to suit the Arabic peoples, the desert peoples, and give them strong laws, basically, to make them more cohesive as a society. So they all come from the same root. You'll find in every region of the world there's always a trinity of religions which are associated from a main root. And so for the West they gave them Judaism, then Christianity, and Mohammedanism coming from, or Islam coming from the same source. You'll find in the Far East to give you Shintoism, a form of Japanese Buddhism, and another mainstream religion, or Taoism or Daoism as well. So you always have a trinity of religions for each region of the planet, and that's how it's set up. Slightly altered for the mentalities of different cultures. That's all. That's the only difference there is.
Now, looking back at the Vatican's control over the centuries, do you think they were involved in creating any of these religions?
I know it's been said they've been involved. However, the Vatican, Roman Catholicism itself, you have to look at it through history's eyes to see how it even evolved.
Yeah, go ahead.
We have to realize that what you had was a Roman Empire that knew it could not, it fell towards the end because it could not tax all of its colonies sufficiently to keep Rome in the lifestyle that it accumulated and was used to. So they thought that religion was a better way to dominate the minds of whole people more cheaply, more effectively, especially if you could indoctrinate the young. You will never lose them when they grow up. So the Catholic Church, remember, took someone else's religion, the Gnostic religion, really, And the Gnostics had a Jesus-type figure who they said was mythical. He was a myth of a perfected man, which they all hoped to emulate. So it was almost like a mascot, you might say, of the perfected man, not a real person. And so they were arguing with Constantine when he had the first great meeting in 325 AD to form this new universal church, as it was called at the time. And because the Gnostics wouldn't go along with the Vatican saying, well, Jesus was a real person, Constantine sent out armies to try and kill off all the Gnostics, because they knew, according to them, that it was not a real person that had existed.